Alan Clifford with you. It's 17 minutes past 5. More reaction to the violence in Nottingham and other cities in Westminster. You're going to hear now from Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg. Evening to you.
Good evening.
Cost of policing is going to rise following all of this, isn't it? More resources certainly needed by Nottinghamshire Police in the short term and probably the long term too. What are you going to do about the need for cash for police?
Well, of course, we're going to look at all of the costs of the consequences of what's been going on. It's not just, of course, policing, it's also the businesses that have been destroyed, some of them which, appear not even to have insurance.
But for the police, you're suggesting a 20% cut to their budget, 20% cut to police budgets. Is that now off the table, the 20%
No,
cut?
we think that the savings that we're asking the police to make, as we are asking everybody to make over a number of years, can be done in a way which doesn't jeopardise public safety, not in any way. And that's something that, of course, we looked at very closely, because we wouldn't even suggest it if it would put anyone's safety seriously at risk.
So you don't think that what's happened has had any root in a weakened police force since your coalition started?
Well, you can't clearly blame cuts which haven't actually been implemented yet. So I think that, let's all have a calm look once safety has been restored on our streets about exactly what costs need to be borne by who. Because of course there are costs of this, and of course the government must stand behind the communities affected. But I have to say, right now, and given what's been going on in Nottingham and in Canning Circus, the Meadows, Oxclose, Bulwell, St Anne's, and so on, the thing is to make our streets safe. And I think, for now, the message is very clear. If you're thinking of going out to any of those areas again, to attack police stations, to vandalise property, to damage the community in which you live, the law will catch up with you. You will be arrested, and it will have big consequences for your subsequent life. OK,
just to point out that in Nottinghamshire we have had cuts to the number of police officers, and that's been down to budgetary changes that have come in since the coalition government came in. But
hang on, sorry, I just this idea that someone is setting light to a car, or someone is smashing a window of a shop and stealing something.
No, but what we've seen is that the gangs are running rings around the police, and if there were more police officers, clearly they would find it harder to run rings around. Let's not get bogged down in too much of that, because
hang on, you're making the link, and I really think it is a real disservice to your listeners to somehow pretend that what is out and out criminality, profoundly irresponsible behaviour, but lawless behaviour, is somehow related to whether there are X number of police or
in Nottinghamshire. The assistant chief constable
on the streets.
The assistant chief constable last night said they were finding it difficult to respond to the number of incidents that were happening. That has got to be linked to the number of officers they've got.
But that would pose a challenge to the police force at any time, with whatever numbers. I really do think it's sort of reducing this all to a numbers game, when clearly, when you've got an outbreak of disorder like this, however many police officers you've got, remember the number of police officers.
Well, it is a numbers game, because you're drafting in more police officers.
Can I just finish?
It is a numbers game.
Can I just finish? When I speak to senior police officers, they say to me that the thing that really has the biggest impact on numbers right now is shift patterns, is whether people are away on sick leave, is whether people are away on holiday. And if you look at what's happened in the capital, and there's been more, almost tripling of the number of police officers on the streets, it's changes like that, and indeed forces sharing police officers with each other has made sure that streets are being made safer.
Despite what you think, I'm afraid I have to tell you it is a numbers game. They're drafting in extra officers from Lincolnshire, from South Yorkshire, into Nottinghamshire to boost the numbers. Therefore, it is a numbers game. Now, let's move on to what politicians are doing to try to stop this. Have you or any of your colleagues spoken to any of the youths involved to find out why they are doing it?
Yes, I was in Birmingham.
And what was the answer? Why are they doing it?
I was in Tottenham the day before.
And you spoke to the rioting youths?
Can I just provide an answer?
And what did they say?
Can I provide an answer? I was talking this morning to a number of...
No, I don't need to know who you were. I just want to know what they said.
I'd like to tell you who I was, because then you'd understand the context. They come from Southwark, they come from the south bank of the Thames in London, and they, in fact, actually a lot of them are who weren't involved in the trouble.
What do they say? What do they say?
Well, they say that the youngsters who've been doing this and smashing windows and stealing things are simply doing it because they think they've got an opportunity to smash and grab mobile phones, electronic goods, shoes, clothes that they want. It is pure, simple criminality, nothing more, nothing less.
Well, that must be terrifying then, to have to convey that message that we're in a society where just because people want something, they feel they can go out and grab it. That sounds like law and order has failed, doesn't it? Just briefly, a couple of points here. You've got a bit of a record of this sort of thing, haven't you? When you were 16, you were convicted of arson. You set fire to 2 greenhouses.
The idea that has any relationship with what has been going on in Nottingham or in other cities.
I'm just thinking you might have an empathy with a 16-year-old mind that has a desire to burn things.
Of course I don't have empathy with people who break the law. Of course I don't have empathy with people
who
did it. Destroy their own communities. I didn't do anything like...
You were convicted of arson and given a community sentence.
I was not convicted, and for heaven's sake, to try and make a link between a totally unrelated event, which is nothing like the level of public disorder.
I was only trying to see if you had empathy with the people who are doing this.
I do not. Do you?
Well, I think it would be a more valid and constructive way forward to try and understand what's going on, rather than just threatening people with water cannon and rubber bullets.
I don't think this is time for empathy for people who are breaking the law and trashing their own neighbourhoods. We will have months and weeks ahead to discuss what might be the underlying or other more immediate causes for this. The police will review their tactics. We can look at why some of these youngsters clearly feel they've got no stake, no sense of responsibility, no sense of opportunity maybe in some of their communities. But for now, what they're doing is they're breaking the law, and the full force of law must be brought to bear right on top of them.
Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg in Westminster, thank you very much indeed. 23 minutes past 5.
Your breakfast show on BBC Radio Nottingham.